Hello, welcome to the Backdrop CMS user group meeting for December the 5th, 2024. Luke McCormick is going to be talking to us today. I'm not sure about what. He will get to that. Um, I'm Justin Kaiser. I'm in Muncie, Indiana. I use Backdrop a lot. I work for a nonprofit called the Academy of Model Aeronautics. Um, let's continue with introductions. It looks like we have two Tims here. So
I can jump in, and then the other Tim, get ready. I'm Tim Erickson. I'm in St. Paul, Tim, in Deerwood, Minnesota, and just having a busy time right now. So I'll pass it along. Tim and Casey, are you available to introduce yourself? If not, that's okay.
I am.
Okay,
I Yeah, I'm just
but
here kind of watching what's going on, trying to get involved a little more.
great. Well, how about I just say this? This week is our user group meeting, and Luke, at the very last minute, agreed to jump in and do a little talk that he's been doing about simplifying. It's been done on simplifying Drupal in the past, and he's going to apply that to Backdrop. And I'll leave it at that. You tell us more about it. Luke, introduce yourself and go right ahead.
All right. I am Luke McCormick. I'm Cell Ear on Drupal.org and X Twitter and various other places like that. I'm a web business analyst, project manager, technical architect, uh, operating in Northern California near San Francisco. Um, I've been involved in Drupal since 2008 and in Backdrop since 2015, right from the beginning. Um, and they're related. And with that, I'll segue into the topic of my discussion here today. Um, so since it has roots in the past and hopefully a vision into the future if things work out well. Um, you know, when I got into Drupal, I was amazed at all the things that I could do without having to do much programming in Drupal. I'd been a web programmer already for, let's see, 2015, for 20 years. At that, well, I guess 15 years when I first started using Drupal and had, constructed websites in a whole variety of languages with different database backends and all sorts of stuff. And when I picked up Drupal, it was largely because I wanted to outsource a lot of the complicated pieces of the web development experience and concentrate more on crafting user experiences and with content types and fields and taxonomies and views and panels at the time it seemed like and things like user management and multilingual things and all sorts of stuff in Drupal solved many of the problems that I had, wrestled with painfully with code for years and years. And so that seemed like a good place to start. And at some point I got disappointed that I couldn't go all the way. That I could put together, 90% of a site, but then, you know, to get that last 10% done, I had no choice but to go and code like I had been doing for years. And, it felt primitive and error prone and things like that. So, a few years later, I got into Drupal in Drupal 6, and Drupal 7 was pretty much the same, and it seemed like it was moving along. Then Drupal 8 came along, and rather than solve the problems that I was hoping would be solved, it made them all worse. It became, fantastically more complicated and more code and command line driven and less user interface driven. And I found it really disappointing. Around that time, I found that I was the only one that was unhappy with various directions. And so when Backdrop split off from the Drupal 7 code base, I was right on it and have been uh, doing things. So fast forward, we'll skip a few years along here. And last year at DrupalCon Lille, where I was, uh, I finally decided I'd had enough and started actually registered a domain name, simplifiedrupal.com, and started kind of making this my calling card. Literally, I have cards that say simplify Drupal on them. And that led, I put together a site which I'll flash to before we're done with this. It's simplifiedrupal.com. And I actually have started giving talks on it.
I hope you built that site with Backdrop. Just kidding.
Yeah, well, as it turns out, just in order to stick within the thing, I built it in Drupal. It would have been a lot easier in Backdrop, and that's kind of part of the genesis of the talk here. So I've given it twice. My talk on making Drupal less complicated to differentiate it from the actual name of the site. I gave it at Badcamp in October, and then again at New England Drupal Camp in November. And I have it proposed as a session for DrupalCon Atlanta. So, fingers crossed, maybe I'll be giving it there. But for this users group meeting, we were throwing around ideas for what we could talk about, and like Backdrop comes up a lot. Each of these discussions that I've had that has been in the room, and it's actually one of the slides that were in there about how Backdrop has wrestled with and solved, in fact, some of these issues. But I'm hard to satisfy. So it hasn't solved all of them, and there's things that I still are carrying over from Drupal into Backdrop, and so thus this talk. I've rejiggered the talk that I gave into making Backdrop less complicated, and I'll talk through a subset of the slides that I have been presenting, and we'll sort of look at things and see how that feels. Get a sense for what are these problems, how do we address them, what are the low-hanging fruit? Well, what are this is really like the hope is that, well, maybe some of these things can be solved, or actually, like when I find out, you know I don't I'm not always aware of everything that's happening in Backdrop, and so it's entirely possible that some of the things I wish for already exist, and I just don't know where to look for them. And so maybe we'll find out that. And with that in play, let me throw my slides onto a screen, start sharing screens, and let's get into it. Let's see how this works. So let me share this entire screen, because why not? All right. Can you confirm that you see the
You can
right
see
slide?
it. Yep, you can see your slide.
All right. So, I do this little joke a few times of literally crossing out Backdrop and having crossing out Drupal and having Backdrop there. Um, and this is I've used ChatGPT and the DALL-E image generator, actually, along with Adobe's generative image replacement things for a lot of the stuff. And so the graphics come from there. I do a lot of Photoshop things as well, though. But let's move on here, and let's see if there we go. All right. So fast forwarding through these things. Well, one of the things we're probably, I mean, this is an issue that came up in the Drupal presentations, and still around here, I get the same kind of thing in Backdrop world. Uh, it's kind of survivor's bias, right? Like if you're trying to figure out if there's problems, if you say something's too hard, it doesn't necessarily connect with people that have mastered that particular set of difficulties. You're like, well, I can do that. How hard could that be? Um, anyway, and so what this picture, what this idea, and generally this stuff is talking about is it's not so much about the people who have gotten it to work and are happy with the results and that it works for their use cases. What I'm worried about, what I'm thinking about is the potential audiences, the potential users that we've lost, the ones that for whom Drupal or Backdrop are still too complicated to be really comfortable with. And you know, you you can't. There's a limit to what you can do. You can't make everything work magically easy. There's always going to be work involved. But I'm particularly looking for places where we're unnecessarily handicapping ourselves. And the idea I've been looking for a buzzword. If anybody knows like a psychological buzzword for the thought of like your brain can only hold so many things, because that's kind of what I'm fighting with. Because there's things you have to do to get a Drupal or a Backdrop site running, and like a smart person can do them. They're within the capability of things that you can master. But the audience that I think we should keep in mind are people that don't necessarily want to do this full time. That want to be able to do some of what we offer in terms of being able to publish your ideas to the web. But they're doing other things, right? They're lawyers or shopkeepers or model airplane enthusiasts or what have you. So we need to be very sensitive to the bandwidth, the mental bandwidth that we ask for. Um, we don't want to waste it. We want if there's something that can be done easily, uh, make sure it's easy. Um, I want to point to my last bullet item here where I say AI gives this all new complexity because one of the things the way I originally phrased this whole stuff has to do with when you like this was targeted largely to project managers and site owners who are hiring developers. And so for the two talks that I gave at BadCamp and NetCamp, and my site simplifieddrupal.com, they're largely aimed at ways that you can hire programmers that hire Drupal developers without losing your independence to those Drupal developers. So they're almost like things that you should write into the site specifications to ensure that you're not locked into things you don't understand. The things that you can comprehend without having your head explode like the little emoji here. All right. So here's the good news. And we can thank ChatGPT and OpenAI and DALL-E for generating this little picture. I told it about half an hour ago. Draw a black baby dragon opening a present on Christmas, and got this like perfect. Love what it does there. So this is, I talked about this before, the things that come out of the box that are super useful in terms of putting together and configuring a site. The top ones are mostly the ones that I had in my Drupal talk, although I added Layout Manager, because that's definitely a thing in our corner. And at the bottom, I added two things that the Drupal's in the process of adding to the ecosystem, but aren't there yet. But we've got, and they're good, right? Project Browser and Dashboard are terrifically empowering to, site building types that are getting a hang on things. All right. So here we get my slides. This is the first of the slides that I got from Simplified Drupal. And this is, I mean, I already covered this early on, kind of talking about like why we're here. Is part of keeping things simple is to simply care about it. uh, it is so easy when projects are coming down the line to focus on benefits that are achieved and new problems that are solved. And it's easy to sort of poo-poo extra complexity that this might add. So sometimes gigantic amounts of complexity. In the case of Drupal, adding the whole composer dependency made it easier for high-end site developers to, maintain tight control over gigantic $1 million sites, and made it 3 times harder for part-timers to get started and get anything running. Like a dramatic increase in complexity for something that does not benefit anybody that has less than, 2 full-time web developers on staff. It just made it all harder. So step one is care. Don't unnecessarily add controls. Here is like a very pointed poke at the idea of prioritizing the site owners, the people who paid for the site and need something. In just in case the model airplane owners, right? That their needs, and it seems obvious, right? But like somehow that seems to get lost sometimes. Is that even though they're generally not in the room, and that's actually the thing is, the guy in the suit in the Starbucks in the front of here, like in any given site, their needs matter. But like when we're having dev meetings here in Backdrop Lands, they're nowhere around, and we make things harder for them sometimes without. It's not that we don't like them; we just aren't thinking about them necessarily, right? Like just the person who, when the 6 developers there are all snowboarding, and they need to add something to the homepage. We have to make sure that they can, right? So this is site builder within Drupal, and within Backdrop too, is used as a synonym for kind of like beginner developer. Like it's someone who's becoming a site developer, but doesn't yet know. This is the stage you go through before you learn how to like write modules. And I really want to elevate the role of site builder to be beyond that. The coders need to work for the site builder. The site builder is the one who, works directly for the guy in the seat there, and knows the site backwards and forwards, knows what all the pieces do, is in close contact with the content editors. It is not a contractor on the other side of the world that comes in once every year to change things. Like the site builder works almost certainly for the site owner in the previous thing. There needs to be somebody on site that knows what's going on. And it's not that they should be considered beginner anything, right? They are an expert at the site. They know the market. They're probably marketers, right? Or at least somewhere along that. Like they know the company, they know the culture, they know the products. They know every term in the taxonomy, like they care about it. They live and die for it. Um, but it's easy to freeze them out. If we think they're just beginning developers, then we take things away from them. And I've seen this, twice in the last year when I've taken over and helped with Drupal sites. I have found large content pieces that show up on the front pages on two different sites. I saw this that were where the text on the site was burned into the templates. And you couldn't change that text unless you know did a git commit to the repo and went through all sorts of crazy stuff just to change the words in like the big boxes on your front of the screen. So don't do that. That should be something that you can say to the person who's in the meeting, hey, change this afternoon. Like, yeah, sure, boom, boom, done. Right? So if nothing else, maybe this might be the most prevalent, the most important thought I have to backdrop is make sure you don't strip this incredibly important person from the power they need to actually get stuff done. Don't make them call somebody to do things they should be able to do themselves. All right, and here's another side of the thing. Because we have a lot of superheroes, like the way it's designed, in order to do anything, honestly, in either Drupal or Backdrop, you really got to understand everything. You can't like learn a piece and then usefully do that because it's all messily intertwined and related to each other. So the flip side, and maybe I need a diagram that shows this, is I'm proposing that rather than have everybody do everything, we make it so that you can factor out. So you can have, I mean, if nothing else, it'd be nice to be able to have designers come in and design without having to learn any PHP at all. Like, why should a designer ever even see PHP? It just doesn't make any sense. You want them to be able to do their pretty pictures, and you want people who are really good at that, good enough that you want to get designers into the system and other stuff. But we'll talk about designers for a second. You want to get designers in the system who are able to earn their living, who are good enough at designing that they don't have to learn PHP. And because if you require them to learn PHP, they're going to got to do something else. Uh, so that's with that. This flows up on a bunch of the other things. It's nice to be able to make custom modules. They're very powerful. They're very useful. But like, try not to. I mean, it. The thing about custom modules is they're the icebergs of site development, right? Like whatever work it takes to create them is dwarfed by the work it takes to maintain them later on. you know so really, and this is one of my ongoing themes, is put custom modules in a box. Like, try not to make them in the first place. Try to find some way that doesn't involve a custom module to get it done. If you are going to make a custom module, document the bejesus out of it. It should be super clear, like can't miss it clear what it does, why it does. The I've had like as a business analyst and project manager a zillion times where I've inherited a site where there's literally dozens of custom modules and nobody knows what they do. They only know that they can't not have them. So if but part of it, let's see, am I gonna come with this later? No, I removed that slide. So I mean, part of my thought is put this character in charge of the custom modules. Like, this character should be able to answer any question about any custom module. Should be able to turn them off, turn them on. Like if you delete a site section, he should know, okay, that we don't need this module anymore. And he has to be able to do that without having to read the source code for the custom module. Like somehow it's the responsibility of whoever builds the module, whichever of these people build a module, to make sure that everything you need to know about it ends up in this person's hands so that they can, decide if you need an upgrade. Like this person needs to know like whether or not it's worth it to keep that custom module. This person should be able to say, no, all right, screw it. That's not worth $30,000 to us to keep that thing alive. There's another idea there. I don't know. This one, I've worked with a lot of migrations just over the years, many things, and just sort of good advice. Like the website should not be the source of truth for your content. It's to display it to the world, but like somehow or other, you should have this information elsewhere so that if you decide to move somewhere else, you can move the content with you. For what it's worth, WordPress kind of has this built in, right? Like this gets messed up depending on what plugins you use, but like out of the box WordPress, if you just use the articles and posts that are the default content types, it has a little menu item that says, export content. And you can then later import that content into a totally different WordPress site. And, you can export content from a WordPress site that you built 10 years ago and import into one that you just downloaded now, and it works, sort of. I haven't done a lot of that. Probably has problems. But at least theoretically it's there. And it's a valuable thing. Guy in the suit wants that. All right, we're almost done. This is my site, and actually we'll go over there briefly because there's a handful of things that weren't in slides that are relevant to there. So I'll share a screen for that in a second. And so finally, another new slide here. Again, thank you, Dolly. When I say, make me a baby black dragon holding a clipboard and a pencil. So beautiful. So in order, like just kind of things that I wrote this list just a short bite before, but people recognize these are things I've been talking about in the past, and I talked a lot about a little bit just now in the presentation that we've had so far. I might go open a backdrop site. In fact, Tim, if you wouldn't mind, if you could have like any backdrop site open that we could go to the
Sure.
administrative interface and we can take a look at that together in a few minutes.
Yep, I'll do that.
But one of the things that I see, it's just when you fire up a backdrop site that has nothing in it, that's brand new, it looks full of stuff. And again, that's not really a problem when you first start, but the problem is when you then go put some stuff into it, when you put 20 or 30 hours of work into that backdrop site, it doesn't look that different, and it's hard to find the stuff that you did, and it's hard to know what you changed, or even more, if what somebody else might have changed. I'm experiencing that this week. I have a backdrop site, and the developers had to call me to do things that they should be able to change themselves. And maybe the onus is on me to document where they have to go in the interface to find things. Maybe it's documentation, but I kind of think we could make it more obvious. We shouldn't have the most important things buried as deeply as they are. To do it. And that's oh shoot, now I am recording. uh, All
Don't
right.
share anything secret.
Well, we'll edit that out in post, right? All right. So let's actually go to simplify
Oh,
Drupal
sure.
here, and let's show you a couple things. Well, one of the things that are backdrop relevant is you'll notice in here, I made the recommendation to use backdrop. Um, Here I am, unfortunately, in my, um, I should be logged out. Yeah, what are you gonna do? You know what? Why don't I um, use an incognito window so that we're not confusing my presented part of the site with actually. Come on, Mac. Here we go. All right. Sorry about that. A little hackiness on my part, but yeah, you know, I gave a pitch for backdrop directly and indirectly in the larger site. I did a couple things that that are relevant to backdrop. In that, for example, we have the dashboard, which is very easily modifiable, and that's an example of a custom admin interface that we make easy to get to in backdrop. We don't advertise a lot. I think we probably do more than that, but it's still nice to have the dashboard. Um, and one of the things that I published in let's see, where's the project browser, right? Yeah, Drupal is incorporating project browser uh, as a way to make it simpler for site builders and others to get access to functionality without having to say composer required Drupal / module name or anything like that. Um, and Backdrop has had that for a long time. Good for Backdrop. Uh, Very powerful, very useful feature. And with
Mhm.
that, we've come to the end of the presentation. We lost other Tim, sadly.
Okay.
What do you think? What can? Oh, here, Tim, if you wanted to go share a
Sure.
backdrop admin UI, I'm happy to bitch about that. Hopefully useful.
Hey, this is a brand new, fresh backdrop site I just opened.
Yeah. Well, yeah. All right. Can you log in? Because it's
Yep.
mostly, I mean, almost entirely the stuff I'm talking about has to do with the admin interface to things.
Sure.
Uh,
So I think something, no, well, your point about uh, better advertising the dashboard as we do take you. This is a brand new site. It took me directly to the dashboard.
yeah.
Uh, when there is, like when we spin up a PR sandbox or something, there's a little note that says, you might want to start. I think I'm trying to think of when the scenario is. Sometimes it takes you to the front page.
Yeah.
Um, and when it takes you to the front page, the very first time, it should give you a note saying you should try the dashboard. I don't remember the difference though. Why in this case it took me directly to the dashboard, and when it takes you, when it doesn't matter.
Oh, well, when you log in, it takes you to the dashboard, and unless you've changed that, that's default login behavior. But a lot of us, for better or worse, just stay logged in all the time, so we never see that login behavior.
No, no.
So I think that's a chicken and egg problem. That the dashboard's pretty good, but it's not. Could use some iteration, some tuning up.
Yeah.
And the more it's used, the more that's worthwhile. The more that's worthwhile, the more it'll get used. One of those things. But at some point, I wouldn't mind that. But here, look at you know the thing that kind of oh, bugs me a little bit is the menus along the top of the screen, right? Like
Mhm.
content makes perfect sense. User accounts makes perfect sense. And this can be a fix with roles, but we don't tend to do that much, right? Like you, if we're going to insist that you, but and even if you hide things with roles, like it's a big brush. It hides funny things. It's hard to necessarily do. So just in this default, like seeing everything administrator view, I mean, right along the top, you've got, appearance and functionality taking up giant gobs of extremely valuable top real estate for things that in the case of appearance, you do it once in the entire time you own a site, is you choose the theme. And in functionality, not that much more. When you install or uninstall a new module, you know, don't really do that. You don't do that every day.
Mhm.
Like, why aren't those things under configuration? And speaking of configuration, you know, one thing I did today, as Tim knows, I changed the homepage for a backdrop site that I did, and I know where that is. Anyone that's done Drupal for years knows where it's it, but it's way buried. It's under configuration, site information. Scroll down the page to find like where you set the homepage, and in backdrop it's a layout, and it's an attempt to be simpler. I'm not sure if it's simpler. uh, and so without getting into detail, like the only parts I actually like about this are I like dashboard, content, user counts, and reports.
Mhm.
Those kind of make sense. Those are things that like in the daily ebb and flow of a site owner, I could see going to all four of those every day. Um, the others I'd like to tuck in more and then shuffle stuff around, like appearance. There's all these things that affect appearance, right? There's the theme, there's theme settings, there's the views, there's layout, there's all these choices. Like, why can't we put at least those other appearance things? It seems like there's a distinction between like the structure, the you know infrastructure that a site is built on, the information architecture that you get built on that, and then the UI of presenting that, and then finally just using your site on a day-to-day basis,
Sure.
managing users and checking reports and things like that. Yeah.
Well, this one of the things we've done that you're aware of, Luke, is great added an editor role out of the box. And this is what the editor sees if they're using the editor role. And I know that may not be exactly what you had in mind, but I thought we could at least look at that. That we do have that option that if you're just a site editor and just log in as a site editor, you have a very limited menu, maybe too limited
Yeah.
from what you're saying. I don't know.
Well,
But
no, this is one of those things that, like earlier, and I said that I might not be aware. I had kind of forgotten about the editor role, to be honest. And it's a great
right.
idea. It's actually the kind of thing that Backdrop's doing right and sort of low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
I think we could get a lot of value by iterating the editor role a little bit and and making that make more sense. Uh,
Mhm.
and how's the editor different from? I mean, is that so? That's content editor, presumably, right? Like
I
that's
think that's the intent is that this is a content editor. Yeah.
yeah. I I feel like they might want the reports too.
Um,
It's going to
sure.
require us to tease the reports as to like, okay, who's looking at what in the reports and why are they looking at it? And this is an example of where we have a lot of reports that have like very detailed, very techy information, and that's useful stuff. But buried in there is stuff that is useful to people who aren't necessarily all that super techy, right? 404s. If you go into the logs, you see you see the 404s. Content editor desperately wants to know that. What are people searching for that they're not finding? Kind of the SEO things, the paths, the analytics. I mean, that stuff's sort of in there, but hard to find. Not really. I don't
Well, do
know.
you want to talk for a minute about what reports maybe a site editor would want? Because they
Mm,
probably don't need the fields report, right?
yeah, yeah. Not,
So,
not so much, just because
yeah.
I don't want to dive too deep into it because there's so many. Like it's kind of a broad thing. What I would put as an action item actually maybe is, going back to my slide of like prioritize simplicity. Like, what could we do to 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 hide some of the cruft that I see? Here's another thing actually. Uh go to the layout of any page.
Right,
And
which is the
let's get the
default
layout
layout.
editor. Yeah. So super powerful stuff here. Click on any of those configure buttons.
It's the drop down. No, you want to click on the actual
Oh, yeah, click
configure.
on configure, right? And
Hmm.
scroll down here, right? Like there's like a ton of stuff here, especially like look at the bottom. Look at style settings, visibilities, admin labels, things like
Hmm.
that. It's like half hidden. Like that you don't necessarily know. Yeah, undo style settings, right? So, you know, there might be classes there, there might be not. With that closed, you don't know if there's classes there or not. It looks the same if somebody's put like really important part of site functionality in there, or if they haven't touched it. And that's maybe that's one of my asks that like is there a way that we could leave like fingerprints around just so that we can find what somebody has done rather than have to open every everything? Is there a way to have maybe something to report? Here's all the things that somebody did to this site. Because it's filled with possibilities. It's filled with like hundreds of things you could do, but probably haven't.
Hmm.
And how do you find out what, imagine you've inherited the site from somebody else. Uh,
Yeah,
How do you know what they did? How do you know which of these things to open and look at and look for changes?
sure. I don't remember talking about this before, but having a sometimes in settings pages, there'll be something that indicates whether certain settings are in their default state or they've been altered.
Yeah.
And I can imagine having some sort of an indicator on things like this that indicate that there have been some modifications to them.
Yeah, Jin does that actually in views in like a hugely useful way. So that
Hmm.
might be a model for something that we could
Hmm.
replicate somewhere else. Is um
Sure. I mean, I want to go back to your sort of the main points that you were making, and you were really
yeah,
stressing the putting content owners above developers. And I mean, I
yeah,
think that obviously that was a part of your Drupal presentation. I think it's something we've tried to do a lot in Backdrop. It's one of our core values on
it
our
is. Absolutely.
philosophy page, and I think it
Yeah.
does get talked about a lot in the issue queue. Is that anytime we're adding a feature, we're talking about does it complicate or simplify? And a lot of features don't get in because we don't want them to make the user experience to be more complex. So,
Yeah.
uh, anyways,
How
I
about
think
is there a pattern we could adopt that would make it clear if something hasn't been done. Look, I mean, views has that kind of built in, right? Like go to structure views and
Well,
look at recent comments. See how it's grayed out?
yeah. Well, actually, yes, exactly. You want me to enable that?
No, no, leave it grayed out. Like
Yeah.
grayed out is kind of the idea. Grayed out tells you like you don't have to click into that to find out if there's anything important. The grayed out tells you that I mean I'd rather it be hidden, but nevertheless that's better than nothing. At least I know I don't have to worry about that.
Well, in this case, though, that means it's not being used at all, as opposed to um, what if a promoted cards is a default view.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're suggesting that. I'd like to know, is that still in the default state or has somebody modified it?
Yeah, I have a word I can apply. Maybe I could write a custom module called shrink wrap, whereas it's like a bottle of medicine in the U.S., right?
But
Like
but we're supposed to avoid custom modules.
yeah,
He might have meant contrib. Did you mean you should
Oh,
make a contrib? He did say custom, but
I,
you meant
you're
contrib,
right.
I think. Yeah.
I did in fact mean to say contrib. Sorry.
Yeah.
good, good, good.
How
Um,
come this is a fresh site that I haven't done anything with? How come it says promoted content has been overridden?
yeah, why is that indeed?
And promoted cards is custom. I don't, in this case, I don't understand what storage state means. So that must mean something other than what I'm thinking it does.
Yeah.
You know,
I'd love to have
go ahead.
I'd love to have this sorted actually to prioritize things that we've done that this site has done because constantly in a
Mhm.
production site you've got bazillion views and so I do like personal naming wars where I name things like 00 something just to get it to go to the top of lists
Right.
so that it doesn't get lost in the boilerplate things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think this is really about something else, but that might be interesting
Yeah,
to
I
talk
mean there's
about.
a historical thing to that in that views initial years and years and years ago and probably to this day like stores configuration in the database as you write them and back in the features days you used to be able to export a view to a feature and then that would show up it would show up there letting you know if the that particular view had changed and so sort of dribbling out the kind of information that I would love to make just super obvious.
Now, I don't know what issues we have in the issue queue, if we have them or not, but that I'll try and look and see if we have open issues for that particular thing already. One of the things, so Luke, you did a post in the issue queue many years ago describing sort of your idea of what a dashboard would look like that
Mhm.
very much influenced and pushed forward this initiative. I still think, as you pointed out, it has a ways to go. It could be better out of the box. One of the things that I've been trying to do for my clients is customize it, because you can easily, for example, this welcome to Backdrop CMS block. 3 years after a website has been launched, there's really no reason for that to still be here. It
Yeah.
probably is no longer useful. So we tend to now disable this block after we've launched a site. The backdrop news, I don't necessarily like to disable, but I also don't necessarily like to give it that much prominence. So I sometimes move that down because you can easily, go to but one of the things you really stressed in your presentation, documenting and keeping track of what things are, and throughout your presentation, an emphasis is on what things mean and what they are, and I've always thought in Drupal and Backdrop that I'd like to do a better job of documenting how I built the site for future
Yeah.
people. And there, some of that is like setting good admin labels and descriptions, like when you create a content type, be sure to give it a description. Sometimes we create content types and we don't give them descriptions. But my point is that there are some ways where you built-in tools for sort of documenting what you've done. But in other ways, there's very limited tools. And one of the things that I've started to do for some of my clients is I have a recipe called user guide that basically enables the book module and configures it for editors and admins only, so that you can actually create pages that are only accessible to the editors, and you can actually make notes right within Backdrop.
We've had a similar idea. I've done something along that same line.
Mhm. But
And
the idea is to just allow for some sort of in-site documentation of what you've done, which I think is not as easy as it should be. Go ahead, Justin.
I actually made a Drupal site with that idea. And with the idea of a dashboard, I created my own dashboard. And like I used a module to redirect the login to this dashboard page rather than going to your user profile page.
Right.
And it had the book module on there with a user guide of the site.
Love it. That's totally brilliant.
What go ahead.
Well, I just want to throw in that, like you mentioned the dashboard and how I had proposed it, but I use this all the time as an example of just the magic of Backdrop, because like from my perspective, I I came in and wrote a bitchy blog post about like how I wish this thing existed, and then I just went away. I got distracted. Came back a few months later and it was in the product. It was there, beautiful. Like that to me is just, it's like the Star Trek,
Some something about
replicator
this
experience.
page.
Like, computer, make me a beautiful dashboard that everybody can use. Yes.
Now, so the other thing that we've been doing in a lot of our sites with the dashboard and in this kind of documentation is just sort of replacing this welcome to Backdrop block with just a custom block where the site editor can jot notes. So that's sort of short of having the whole user guide with book pages, and we've done both of them together as well. In other sessions, I've sort of shown some sites where we've done that. So, but oftentimes this dashboard now in some of our clients, you'll land here and that first block is a bunch of shortcut links or even notes. We have one, most of our sites are managed by like one person, but we have one client that has a team of 6 or 7 different content editors.
Yeah.
And the lead content editor has been using the dashboard to make a whole list of, this is how we do X, this is how we do Y. And it's just a custom block on the dashboard.
That's
So that-
fantastic.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good candidate for a recipe.
Yeah, I have to think about it. I mean, in their case, it's so custom, I have to think about how to generalize it. But no, I mean, yes, I think a recipe could basically remove this block or just disable it and replace it with a block with just some sample content that then you could edit.
Yeah.
In fact, maybe that should be a part of the site user guide recipe, although you might not want both. So maybe I have it as something. Yeah. It's a good
Oh,
idea.
great. All right, so we're at time, and I think we're
Yeah,
out
we
of
are.
material.
Okay.
That was good.
I'll stop sharing and maybe we'll stop the recording. I can hang around for a minute if you want to chat. Yeah, let's go ahead and end the recording. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Luke, for
Thank you, Internet.
stimulating our thoughts.